I walked around many malls in Dubai, and right next to local brands here and there, I've seen the same thing over and over. Starbucks, Nike, Apple, Alo, even Chipotle is in town. And then it hit me. Why aren't our brands making it big elsewhere? I mean, think about it. The Middle East has insane wealth, futuristic cities rising out of the desert, and some of the most ambitious projects in the world. Yet somehow the region that gave us algebra, astronomy, and coffee hasn't given us the next Nike. It's not that the Middle East doesn't have successful companies or talented people. They absolutely do. But there is something fascinating happening with how America builds brands that literally takes over the world. And that's what I want to figure out. What I discovered is that this isn't just about marketing budgets or business strategies. It's a complex web of historical advantages, cultural differences, and something I'm calling the packaging problem, which, funny enough, is what led me to create my own company. But we'll get to that. I lived and worked in New York, sold my brand in over 300 stores across the US, and now through Third, I work with a ton of American and Middle Eastern companies and founders. So I've seen firsthand what makes American brands so powerful and why the Middle East hasn't quite cracked the code yet. But here's the good news. We can learn from that. If you're an entrepreneur trying to build a brand the whole world will buy from outside of America, this video will break down the key business and branding lessons from the US that you can apply right now. So let's get to it. First, let's clarify something that might surprise you. America's branding genius isn't necessarily about pure invention. It's about taking existing ideas from around the world and perfecting how they're packaged and marketed. Look at some of America's most successful global brands. Starbucks, that's Italian coffee culture repackaged with consistent branding and experience. Chipotle and Taco Bell are just Mexican cuisine transformed into fast food empires. Even Apple, the holy grail of American innovation, didn't invent the smartphone. They just made it irresistible and told a better story about it. What's fascinating is that America's global dominance in brands comes partly from being really good at cultural appropriation, taking ideas from around the world, refining them, and making them globally dominant through superior storytelling. Starbucks didn't invent coffee. They invented coffee as an experience. Meanwhile, the Middle East has historically been on the opposite side of this exchange, importing brands, very rarely exporting them. Walk through Dubai Mall or downtown Doha, and what do you see? A parade of global brands, crowds lining up for Starbucks, Nike, McDonald's, and Apple. The appetite for global products is huge. But when Middle Eastern companies create their own brands, they often copy-paste what works in America instead of building on their own cultural strengths. Here's another key difference that gives American brands a serious head start. America has a unified market of 330 million relatively wealthy consumers speaking the same language, following the same regulations, and consuming the same media. The Middle East is a whole different game. It's not one big market, it's many markets, each with its own languages, culture, economy, and consumer behavior. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt, and Lebanon all have distinct purchasing patterns, media habits, and cultural sensitivities. Even the humor is different. What's funny in Egypt might not be in Kuwait. For a Saudi brand to go global, it first has to navigate expansion into neighboring countries with different rules and consumer preferences before it can even think about reaching Western markets. It's like trying to run the same race as an American brand, but having to zigzag through obstacles, switch lanes, and clear roadblocks along the way. And that makes a huge difference. This brings me to what I call the packaging problem. And honestly, is the reason I started my company in the first place. The Middle East has amazing success stories, but they don't always translate well for a global audience. Meanwhile, America has mastered the art of branding that resonates everywhere. Nike's Just Do It isn't just about shoes, it's about human determination. Apple's innovation story feels personal and aspirational. Coca-Cola isn't just a soda, it's happiness. The Middle East has rich history, deep culture, and powerful stories, but it struggles to package them in a way that connects with the rest of the world. And I don't just mean the literal packaging. I'm talking about how brands tell their stories and position themselves globally, and that makes a huge difference. There is another big difference: the risk-taking culture. The US glorifies entrepreneurship and all the unreasonable risks that come with it. It values all types of jobs and loves an underdog story. Movies, books, and even the media celebrate stories of people starting from nothing, falling over and over, and then finally succeeding. That's the American dream, right? In places like Silicon Valley, failing is almost a badge of honor. It shows you were bold enough to go after something big. But in the Middle East, especially in the Gulf, there is this thing called saving face. People rarely talk about their struggles because they're worried about what others will think. It's funny because the Middle East idolizes people like Oprah and Steve Harvey, people who started with nothing and turned their lives around. But when it's their own people trying to build something from the ground up, there's not the same support until they've made it big. We've been asked to change brand stories to hide the fact that a founder was once broke before getting successful. In America, that's the part that inspires people. In the Middle East, it's considered embarrassing. Risk aversion is partly cultural but also structural. The Gulf specifically has traditionally relied on government jobs and oil wealth, creating an environment where entrepreneurial risk-taking hasn't been always necessary for a comfortable life. Next, America's cultural exports. Movies, music, TV shows, they're basically a non-stop commercial for its brands. When characters in Hollywood films drink Coke, wear Levi, and use Apple laptops, those brands instantly become cool and aspirational around the world. It's free advertising on a massive scale. Meanwhile, the narrative around the Middle East in global media has largely been written by others. In Hollywood, if people from the region aren't portrayed as a threat, they're subjected to Orientalist caricatures, mystical, dangerous, and exotic. And when the world only sees you through the lens of oil, terrorism, or Aladdin, building a consumer brand that resonates globally becomes much harder. But now we're seeing a major shift. Middle Eastern countries are investing billions to build what's called soft power. Saudi Arabia made headlines by signing Cristiano Ronaldo to Al Nassr for $200 million per year. Yas Island brought in huge names like Shaquille O'Neal, Kevin Hart, and Ryan Reynolds to promote Abu Dhabi. Huda Beauty, a brand born in the Middle East, is now a global hit, selling millions in places like America. Plus, we're seeing more global shows on Netflix that share Middle Eastern stories like the show Mo or the movie The Swimmers. We're even in reality TV with shows like Love is Blind and Dubai Bling that give the region a whole new spotlight. So yes, it is happening. But to truly break through, it's going to take more than a few big names or flashy campaigns. It's about building those emotional connections with global audiences on their terms. Now let's talk about a Middle Eastern brand that actually made it big globally, Emirates Airlines. But instead of just reading about it, I wanted to experience it myself. So I booked a flight from Dubai to Indonesia to see what makes Emirates different. From the moment you step on board, it's clear. This isn't just a flight, it's a full-on brand experience. The crew comes from over 160 nationalities and speaks more than 60 languages. My flight attendant greeted me in Arabic and English. Others were speaking Russian and Indonesian. Even in economy, the attention to detail is next level. The seats are wider than most airlines, the entertainment system has over 4,500 channels, and the food is actually good. But what really stands out is how Emirates takes Middle Eastern hospitality and culture and makes it accessible to everybody. Kind of how America does it. They also took a page from the American brand playbook with big marketing using sports teams and Hollywood celebrities. The result is a $7.7 billion brand, one of the few Middle Eastern names with true global dominance. But here's the thing. Emirates had massive government backing to scale fast. Most Middle Eastern entrepreneurs don't. They're competing in a fragmented market with limited access to capital. That's where the real challenge is. So will a Middle Eastern brand ever become the next Apple or Nike? I believe it absolutely could happen, but it would take a different approach. The Middle East has some huge advantages that aren't being fully used yet. It's global in outlook, attracting talent from everywhere, diverse talent like I've seen nowhere else. And Gulf countries are using their wealth to build non-oil industries. Plus, the region is at the crossroads of East and West with access to tons of market. Projects like Saudi's $500 billion NEOM show just how big the vision is. It's not just about oil, it's about positioning the kingdom as a tech and innovation hub. Think about the Line, a futuristic vertical city with no cars, streets, or carbon emission. This kind of ambition and bold vision could really change the way the world sees the region. Middle Eastern brands don't need to copy American branding, they need to find their own voice and tell stories that blend their heritage with forward-thinking ideas. Kind of like what Korea did with Samsung and K-pop. The question why does America build better brands than the Middle East isn't just about marketing or economics. It's about history, culture, and narrative. America doesn't necessarily create better products, but it has mastered the art of building emotional connections around those products. The American dream itself is essentially a meta brand that every American company can tap into. Just as America built the American dream, the Middle East needs a compelling narrative for its future. A story that captures the imagination of both its own people and the world. When that narrative emerges, we'll see Middle Eastern brands take on the world. But for now, American brands are still leading because they've mastered not just making things, but making us feel stuff about those things. So what do you think? Could the Middle East produce the next Apple? And with that, I'll see you guys in the next video.
Remember to like and subscribe.
No!